Welcome to the Nature Commission 2024 talk series. This presentation is about the state of coastal habitats. The species associated with those habitats, and we'll also cover the pressures on these habitats and what we can all do to help reduce those pressures and protect our natural environment. A lot of the information in this presentation comes from habitat surveys that have been carried out in Guernsey. There have been 3 habitat surveys, 1999, 2010, 2018. The information from these surveys has been put onto layers in Digi, and it is freely available for you to look at. There are 41 different terrestrial habitats in Guernsey, which include the coastal areas that I will be talking about in this presentation. We will look at coastal grassland first, and we can choose a place on the map and zoom in. You can see a small red circle on the map, and we're zooming in on this area around Fort Pesseries near Herm. And in the zoomed in map on the left, you can see that the coastal grassland is coloured in orange and marked with a C. This is an example in this photograph of some coastal grassland near to this site, near to Fort Pesseries. And you can see the pink thrift that thrives in this coastal grassland area. Other plant species that can be found are trefoil, sea campion, and boxhorn plantain. Now, coastal grassland is our most florally diverse grassland and is classified as a priority habitat by the states of Guernsey, as many species are found exclusively in these areas. The near-threatened black meadow ants, as you can see in the top photograph, and the blue-winged grasshopper are found in this habitat. You can see the blue-winged grasshopper in the bottom photograph. The grasslands that have persisted in Guernsey have not suffered the same fate as other grasslands. This is because they are considered unsuitable for farming due to thin soils and as such have not been improved for agriculture. Overall, coastal grassland has decreased by 16% since 1999, although there was a 32% increase from 1999 to 2010, as you can see in the graph. Declines are due to lack of management, leading to succession, which changes the vegetation to scrub, or invasion by sour fig, and also intensive management. Using Digimap maps again, we can zoom in on areas of coastal heathland. We can see here an area near to Plymouth. This is a photograph of an area near Plymouth. Coastal heathland can be seen, and the bell heather can be seen in this photograph. As mentioned, this habitat is defined by the presence of heather, such as ling and bell heather. Though once widespread, historic declines have been considerable and have left only a few remaining patches of coastal heathland. The declines in coastal heathland and fragmentation of the few remaining areas have made this habitat more vulnerable. However, in the past 10 years, there have been signs that recovery is possible and is managed more appropriately. For example, 0.8 hectares of coastal heathland has been established at Plymouth due to long-term sensitive management of a form of agriculture. Coastal heathland has seen a decline in Herm from 1999 to 2018, as you can see on the dark panel. And this is due to scrub encroachment. Declines have subsequently led to coastal heathland being classed as priority habitat in the states of Guernsey. The causes of declines include lack of grazing and nutrient input. Coastal heathland thrives on nutrient soils. The nutrient runoff from the land is likely to have a major impact, encouraging the growth of more vigorous plants. These vigorous plants will then outcompete heathland species. On this map, I have zoomed in on the lower shingle, the salt marsh in as well. And this is at the Colin Best Nature Reserve. This area is part of the Ramsar site in Guernsey. Shingle banks are a mobile environment where few species can survive, but this habitat does support specialist invertebrates and plant species, and some key species of breeding seabirds and waders. As such, shingle banks are classed as a priority habitat by the states of Guernsey. Vegetated shingle banks in Guernsey have seen historic declines due to development of seawalls and coastal roads. They will be at risk of further declines in the future due to coastal squeeze, as these structures will prevent movement of this habitat predicted sea level rises due to climate change. The area of shingle has remained relatively stable since 1999, and any fluctuations are considered to be due to habitat reclassification rather than declines. In Herm and Jessu, shingle has decreased by 53% between 2010 and 2018, although the drivers of this are not known. Saltmarsh is a type of coastal wetland that is temporarily flooded by saltwater brought in by high tides. This habitat provides a range of ecosystem services, such as supporting biodiversity and carbon cycling. There has been extensive loss of this habitat in Guernsey, including historic declines at Bray de Val in 1806, and more recently at Collinvest and Les Salines. This has led to the local extinction of many associated species, such as common sea lavender and marsh arrowgrass. The remaining saltmarsh supports far fewer species than is expected due to these historic extinctions. Saltmarsh in Guernsey is classed as a priority habitat by the state of Guernsey. This is because 95% of this habitat is only found in 2 areas within Guernsey, covering only 1.3 acres. This habitat supports specialist plant species rarely found elsewhere on islands, such as saltmarsh goosefoot and purple grasswort. It is also an important feeding ground for birds. Saltmarsh increased between 1999 and 2010 due to sympathetic management at sites which allowed saltmarsh to develop. The subsequent decrease is due to the conversion of saltmarsh to improved grassland and habitats. Let's now zoom in on some dune habitats. The area chosen here is at Bancrest. There are 5 categories of dune habitat, which are open dune, dune slack, dune grassland, dune heathland, and dune scrub. These are based on different vegetation on sand dune systems, which develops over time due to natural succession. All of these habitats have been classed as priority habitats by the states of Guernsey. Open dune forms when sand accretes and is stabilised by miracles. This can be seen in the photograph on the left at the bottom of the screen. And this will then naturally succeed into dune grassland, heathland, or scrub if it was no erosion or liquid management intervention. Dune slack can be seen in the second photograph on the left, and that occurs in low sheltered areas between the dunes and is sometimes filled with water. These dune habitats support many plant specialists as well as fungi and invertebrates. Much of our dune habitats have been lost due to human disturbance, improvement for leisure purposes, coastal development, creation of seawall, sea level rise, coastal squeeze, unsympathetic management, and quarrying. As such, many dune specialists have become locally extinct, including purple viper's bugloss, which was last recorded in 1980. The other 2 photographs on the screen, which is coastal grassland, and then the dune heathland, which was in the map, as to look for, has actually been moved and is now part of the golf course, so it was unable to be found. Now, dune habitats. Open dune is the first stage of sand dune development. Only a few species can survive in these harsh conditions. This habitat has decreased overall by 35% since 1999. Its spread is restricted by human-made seed offences. Dune slack is the most diverse area of dune system. This habitat has fluctuated with a 55% decrease since 1999, but a 177% increase from 2010 to 2018. Dune grassland has high plant diversity. This habitat has historically declined with a decrease of 9.5% since 1999, although some new patches have been identified recently. Dune heath has returned after being entirely absent in the 2010 Habitat Survey. It is only present in 2 locations at Blanquest Common and in Herm, and they are very limited in extent. This habitat is very important for pollinating insects. It has declined by 71% in Guernsey from 1999 to 2018. Dune scrub provides habitat for nesting birds and small mammals. This habitat has increased overall by 22%, but this is often at the expense of the more diverse dune habitats, such as dune grassland or dune heathland. Herm is well known for its sand dune habitat, which has increased overall since 1999, as you can see here in the graph. Dune slack in Herm has become extinct as of 2018, as the site identified in 1999 has dried out, and the site identified in 2010 has now succeeded to scrub. The loss of the 1999 dune slack site has contributed to dune grassland increasing by 9.1% since 1999. Dune heath has remained stable generally, a small decrease since 2010. Open dune has decreased by 58% from 1999 to 2018 due to erosion and scrub encroachment. Dune scrub has increased substantially by 329%, demonstrating why management is key to maintain other dune habitats to support more specialist species. Drivers of change. It is important to understand the causes and rate of change in the natural environment to be able to understand how we can manage and mitigate the negative impacts and promote the positive impacts of those changes. Various factors will drive change directly and indirectly and can be generated naturally or by human activities. Decisions can be made at the individual, community, business, and government level to influence drivers of change. State of Nature 2024 has identified the primary threats, also known as pressures, to the state of our habitats and species, and delves further into the detail of what is driving those threats. By increasing our understanding of drivers of change, alongside improved understanding of our species and habitats, we can introduce additional targeted conservation measures to try and address the imbalance brought by negative anthropogenic or human impacts. Threats to coastal habitats. We have scrub encroachment, inappropriate management, invasive non-native species, drainage or changes in water regime, extreme weather, coastal squeeze due to sea level rise, development, and pollution. Now, let's look a little bit further at some of those pressures. Invasive non-native species are plants or animals which have been introduced to an area by humans in which they are then able to thrive to the detriment of local species, the economy, or public health. Invasives are a considerable threat to biodiversity and can cause major problems on islands. Humans spread non-native species through the global movement of goods and people all over the world, resulting in the intentional and unintentional introduction of many species which can have wide-ranging consequences. Invasive non-native species may outcompete local species, predate natives, including eggs and young, bring in disease, hybridize with natives, cause habitat alteration and degradation, or negatively alter the balance of ecosystems. Many invasive non-native species can reproduce rapidly and or are generalists which is the key to their quick spread and establishment. The earliest record of sour fig in Guernsey was in 1886. It is native to South Africa, and sour fig was originally planted in domestic gardens, but became established more widely due to its ability to spread prolifically. Sour fig increased in area by 123% from when it was first surveyed in 2010 to the 2018 Habitat Survey. The presence of sour fig creates extensive moats which smother native species, creating a monoculture, and modifies soil properties, hindering native flora re-establishment. Due to the lack of cold winters and heavy frosts, as a consequence of climate change, the plant has suffered little weather damage or died, and this has helped it to spread. The spread of sour fig has caused declines in many specialist native plants and animals that are reliant on coastal grassland and heathland. Inappropriate management. Lack of management can also be detrimental to biodiversity. Land abandonment can lead to an increase in scrub and woodland, with dense scrub increasing by 64% from 1999 to 2018, as you can see here in the graph. Scrub encroachment and lack of grazing can result in degradation of habitat quality and reduction in biodiversity. While scrub is also a valuable habitat providing food and nesting sites, it is less biodiverse compared to our species-rich areas. A balance is needed to implement good land management practices, particularly in areas of high conservation value, like priority habitats, sites of special significance, and areas of biodiversity importance, to increase our biodiversity. Development is another pressure. Being an island means that lack of land availability creates a tension between development and providing space for nature. There is a potential for further declines in valuable habitat if development in the coastal zone in Guernsey continues without thorough consideration of biodiversity impacts. Coastal development in Guernsey and Herm to date has typically been for land reclamation and coastal infrastructure, such as coastal defences, discharge pipes, and harbour areas and anchorages. Coastal development may result in habitat degradation and loss, disturbance of sensitive habitats and species, and also pollution. However, large coastal developments and associated activities such as land reclamation and dredging require an environmental impact assessment, EIA, to assess and mitigate environmental impacts. EIAs may not always lead to the best outcomes for our natural environment, as EIAs produced for developments in Guernsey are not required to be conducted by a suitably qualified ecologist. This means they can often be poorly evidenced and lead to inaccurate conclusions regarding impacts and appropriate mitigations. EIAs should consider the ecological impact of a development, with the applicants utilising available information where relevant and/or conducting ecological surveys where no data is available. Ecological surveys are designed to detect evidence of important species and habitats in areas for development and assess the significance of potential impacts. Guernsey and Herm's regulations, which include consideration of biodiversity, are currently not sufficiently robust to enable holistic and comprehensive protection and enhancement of our natural environment. The habitat surveys and other methods of information gathering summarised in this report have demonstrated that our natural species-rich environments and our priority habitats are generally declining, often due to development. More data on our natural environment is essential to build the evidence base needed for informed decisions and the implementation of robust wildlife legislation. Climate change is a further pressure. We have spoken about coastal squeeze in this presentation, and I will just explain a little bit more about what this phrase means. Sea level is predicted to rise due to climate change. Anthropogenic structures such as seawalls prevent the natural transgression of habitats inland to escape rising sea levels, causing the loss or degradation of habitat. Increased extreme weather events are another consequence of climate change. These damage our coastal habitats, affecting the ecosystem services they provide, and may lead to increased mass mortality events of species that use these habitats. Can we do to help? Better education, the availability of guidance and effective policies, assessment of business impacts, and the introduction and enforcement of robust legislation can help ensure that our natural environment, our habitats, and our species are protected and enhanced for the health of our economy and well-being of our island community, both now and into the future. There are many great organisations who are already supporting the natural environment in the work that they do. Biological data collection, the clearance of invasive plants to nature education events. Corporate support is a valuable way to help these local charities in their work. I'm now going to run you through a case study of sour fig removal. Now, the Guernsey conservation volunteers were asked to do removal of sour fig. Now, sour fig is native to South Africa. First records in Guernsey were in 1886. It was brought in and planted as a low maintenance garden plant, and it was also planted over German fortifications after World War II, after the occupation. Wherever sour fig grows, it smothers the native plants and it does reduce biodiversity. The warmer winters that we have now also allows it to spread. So the states of Guernsey have produced some maps. This is a map from 1990. And the red areas show the areas of sour fig at that time. And this map shows 2001, the situation of sour fig marked in blue. So you can see that it is spreading, particularly on the south coast, but also along the west coast, along the north. The Guernsey Conservation Volunteers were asked to do a pilot project to remove sour fig at Fort Pesaries. And you can see in the small inset map marked with a red arrow where Fort Pesaries is. This site was chosen because it is an isolated headland. There was an extensive problem. The sour fig was 3/4 of the way all around the fort and coming to the slipway in areas as well. But it was a very accessible site, so that we could get skip lorries in, and the removal was relatively easy. So a site visit was underway. And after the site visit, we decided that, yes, we would take on this project. And so 2 skips were delivered for the first work party. A team of people from the Guernsey Conservation Volunteers started removing fig, and it became really sort of obvious very early on that sour fig is very, very bulky, and it filled up the skips very, very quickly. So within the first hour, the 2 skips were full, and the sour fig was piled up because so much of it had been removed in a short space of time. So we needed to rethink how we were going to carry on with this project. The following Saturday, 3 skips were delivered, and the piles of sour fig from the previous weekends were put into those skips. And then we realised that underneath the living green fig, there is a very thick layer of dead sour fig, which would also need to be removed to expose the bare ground. At this point, it wasn't known whether anything would actually grow on this area of ground once the sour fig had been removed, because the sour fig can change the pH of the soil. It was also not known whether the area would need to be reseeded, whether there were seeds in the grounds that would. It just was not known at this stage. To maximise the amount of sour fig that could fit into a skip, people started jumping on the sour fig to clean in as much as possible to maximise the space in the skips. The next work party took place. 5 skips were delivered, and the Guernsey Conservation volunteers were starting to get the hang of the project. So sour fig would be loaded onto tarpaulins. Tarpaulins would be emptied into the skips, and then the sour fig would be jumped on to maximise the amount of fig to get into a skip. And in the bottom photograph there, you can clearly see where sour fig had been removed. And work continued from 2008 into 2009. And every time the Guernsey Conservation volunteers returned to the site, they noticed that there were more shoots of sour fig coming through. And so those new shoots needed to be removed before removing the next large area of sour fig. But there was definitely positive results because the regrowth of native plants was starting to happen. So it was realised then that the area would not need to be reseeded because the native vegetation was coming back of its own accord because the seeds were already in the soil and were now able to grow, the sour fig being removed and all the thick layer of dead sour fig also removed. So by 2010, there had been 9 work parties, 33 skips had been filled with sour fig, about 50 tonnes of sour fig had been removed, which took about 400 hours of work. And in these comparison photos, the top one shows in 2008 what Fort Pesaries looked like with all the sour fig present. And then in 2018, a much more recent one where you can see that the coastal grassland has now been restored. And if you go to that area, you can see closely the pink sea, the cliff, and sea campion, and lots of other. The biodiversity has really, really increased in that area now. But then the 2018 Habitat Survey came out, and in the 2018 Habitat Survey, it said that sour fig had increased by 123% since it was first surveyed in 2010. So between 2010 and 2018, it had increased by 123%. The Guernsey Conservation volunteers took the decision to start increasing the amount of sour fig rather than just the one project at Fort Pesaries. We decided to increase the work that they were doing on this invasive species. So in 2017, a project had been started at the TL, and the photographs in the left column there, you can see where the sour fig was growing and just taking over the whole area. This is a very, very important area because the big-backed meadow ants have nests there, and also the glandular fritillary butterflies breed there. And ribworm plantain in particular is a food source of the glandular fritillary caterpillars. So the area in 2017, it started to remove sour fig. And if you look at the other photographs on this slide, you can see that this area is very much recovering now, and the biodiversity has increased enormously on this site. In 2010, the Guernsey Conservation volunteers took on a new site at Roos on a particularly wet work party, as you can see in that top photograph. But this area has now re-established as a coastal grassland. In 2021, many new sites were taken on. Thankfully, large corporate groups were also helping at this point, which means that much more can be done when you have a large group of people. The top photograph there shows the Guernsey Conservation volunteers working at Lerray Headland. We had 8 skips that day and also filled 10 1-ton bags. We also had a corporate group involved, which meant we could do lots more. So the sites where sour fig was removed in 2021 were Bordeaux, Fort Homay Headlands, Lerray Grassland, Lerray Headland, Lerray Shinglebank, Port Swaff, Portinfer, Ilias, Bazon, and also the Guernsey Conservation volunteers went up to Alderney to help the Alderney Wildlife Trust remove sour fig on the sand dunes at Soy campsite. In 2022, there were also new sites and much bigger projects. A large project at Outback, where the road was closed in order for us to work safely, and then a big project at Fort Le Marchant Headland, which was very successful, and the biodiversity has increased yet again on that site. And then in 2023, new sites once again were Burton Battery, which is near Albec, Port Doyle, Luray National Trust site, another new site at Ratiel National Trust site, the Pickerel, and the big area, big project was Rockane, and the Rockane project continued into 2024, and that has now been completed, other than new sow fig shoots needing to be removed. And at the TL, which is a very important site, the botany section of the Societe went and did a botanical survey down there, and they discovered in a small snapshot survey, they discovered that there were 69 different native plant species in an area that really had previously been covered by sow fig. And I'm sure there are actually some other plants which grow at different times of year, so that number would increase from 69 to a higher number of species that have now colonised that area. So the biodiversity really, really increases with the clearance of sow fig. And looking at Fort Pesaries, it is now a fully restored coastal woodland area. Occasionally, a small sprig of sour fig might pop up, but it is normally removed by passers-by who know the species is not welcome in that area. And you get, having all the native plants, you then have all the native insects populating that area as well. Now, this is the latest sour fig map for Guernsey. So there is still a problem. This was in 2019, but we're hoping that many of the areas now that you see along the west coast, they're marked in yellow, will have now been removed. So hopefully in the next habitat survey, we will see that there has been a big decline in the sour fig, which is present. It is still a problem on the south coast due to the inaccessibility of many of the areas where it is growing. So, how you can help? The important way that islanders can help address data gaps and protect the natural environment is by recording sightings of local wildlife. So software such as iRecord or iNaturalist are free apps that you can download onto a smartphone, and these facilitate the submission of wildlife sightings from multiple sources, particularly the public, to the Guernsey Biological Record Centre. Submission of sightings can include native or invasive non-native species and need only include the location, date, and number seen. This is important in helping to understand abundance and distribution across Guernsey and Herm. Increasing our knowledge through an increase in the submission of biological sightings or records will help inform conservation measures. You could volunteer with some of our local organisations, which are listed in State of Nature 2024. Already given an example of the work of the Guernsey Conservation Volunteers around coastal habitats, but there are many more organisations that would welcome extra volunteers. Citizen science is a great way to contribute to the natural environment by helping to collect important data. Many projects contribute to national schemes, so by collecting data, you will be helping to build a picture of the British Isles as a whole. One example is the Wade account. The BTO project is one of Guernsey's longest running surveys, being conducted since the 1970s and covers a large proportion of beaches in Guernsey. Monthly counts are taken to record wading birds in different areas. And there are many great projects you can get involved with, so check out the Nature Commission website to find out more. You can restrict the impact of your activities in the natural environment by following some of the actions in State of Nature 2024. These include always disposing of waste responsibly, always sticking to footpaths, and leaving no trace of your presence. So the State of Nature 2024, the full report is available on our website via this QR code. There is also a summary report also available on our website. The full report is about 80 pages long, and the summary report is about 8 pages long. So we'd like to thank our sponsors, so that's the States of Guernsey, Guernsey Community Foundation, and the Social Investment Fund. And if you would like to contact the Nature Commission, our details are on the screen. Thank you for listening.